people now are looking into that and finding S Crew Winery, a winery that doesn't actually seem to exist. Is that a real winery, or?
Do you all actually look at and read things, or do you just ask silly questions?
Well, it's listed in the financial disclosure, so can you explain it? Because we have a lot of questions about it, and things just aren't adding up. There's no real phone number. There's no real location.
Why did you want to bite some wine?
Probably not from you, to be honest.
So we have some interesting stories on left-wing corruption to bring you here today, because the Trump administration just brought what is arguably the most important indictment yet against organized communism in this country. And as much as I think we've all been a little bit critical of the Department of Justice for not really doing enough to target and break up the organized violent left, especially in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, it's also worth giving credit where it's due. This is huge. The Southern Poverty Law Center is arguably the spearhead of left-wing NGO nonsense, and the fact that they're being exposed here as huge criminals, false flaggers, I don't even know the term to give this, but it almost proves every conspiracy theory correct about the so-called quote-unquote far right and white supremacy in this country, that it was all astroturfed. It literally is a left-wing psyop in itself. We'll bring you that. But on the other hand, I think it's worth noting that as real, serious indictments come down, right? This is something very important. This is not even about, oh, LaMonica MacGyver put her hands on ice or something and we're trying to charge this congresswoman. No. This, again, is a really huge deal against a really huge organization that we're not getting on some petty technicality, right? It's not an issue of misfiling financial documents. They're involved here with some very serious and high crimes. You know who I would argue is beginning to take notes is, of course, Ilhan Omar, the original Somali fraudster herself. It's worth noting she's been under a lot of financial scrutiny as of late. And suddenly, not only is she making ridiculous, frankly, implausible readjustments to her net worth, but as of today, the long embattled and infamous winery business has now been dissolved. Very similar behavior, by the way, to the Quality Leering Center, where she comes out publicly at first and says, I've committed no crimes, people are being racist, all of my documents are fine. And then now suddenly, under this scrutiny and watching some more competent indictments than before potentially come now against leftists, oh, wait a minute, you're shutting down your businesses, you're running for the hills. But totally not a corrupt congresswoman, by the way. You know, no kings, she's so amazing. She's a progressive, don't you know? She was part of Occupy Democrats. She's one of these characters who's against money in politics, claims to be against the military-industrial complex and the corruption and the Epstein political class. But if you question why my net worth went up to $30 million out of nowhere, you know, you're obviously just a racist. Let's get into all of these stories here today, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And I want to, first of all, start with the ridiculous desperation moves that Ilhan has made as of late. And I'm not sure if this really makes the situation better, right? Because after people started to question, what's up with this winery and how did your net worth, ever since you took office, balloon, your family's net worth, your husband's net worth included there, right? Balloon to $30 million in assets. Well, listen to the brand new excuse she has now come out and stated. Ilhan Omar has said goodbye to her millionaire status after her office says that past filings showing the congresswoman had up to $30 million in assets were due to accounting errors. That is right. The accountant just put in the wrong number or something. Okay, what's the right number? Did they maybe miss a zero? Maybe it was just 3 million? No. An updated filing now claims her and her husband only have assets valued up to $95,000. So, I'm sorry, is this supposed to be believable? Is this the type of accounting they do in Somalia? You know, is that considered remotely plausible? Oh, it was an innocent accounting error. We have a Toyota Corolla that's worth about $16,000. We accidentally said it was worth $16 million. No big deal. It's the ordinary mistake we make on TurboTax every year. Who's really ultimately checking? Are you freaking kidding me? Do I even need to comment on that? Give me a break. But you can see, right? Her original asset value filing said she was worth from $6 to $30 million, So this is implying she owns a house, she probably owns very nice vehicles, maybe a boat, huge businesses. I'm sorry, how on earth does it go from $6 to $30 million to $95,000? That doesn't even make sense. What's the accounting error? Did your cat just walk all over your keyboard and you forgot to check before you submitted it? I mean, utterly insane. And let's keep in mind, right? This is the same chick who just screamed at the State of the Union talking about, oh, Somali fraud is a lie. How dare you say that? She's super passionate about this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, she's the one doing it, It's kind of hard to beat the Somali fraud stereotypes and accusations when, this is what you do right here. Honestly, what accountant are you hiring? The same one who's running the Quality Leering Center? Give me a freaking break. Do I even have to dignify that even? Why would you even come out and say this? Did you really think that people would just not notice this or think, everyone believes it was just an accounting error, by the way, coming from the congresswoman who argues that Donald Trump is a pedophile because of, his name is in the Epstein files. Where's the proof? Which files are you talking about? What do they say about him? He's a pedophile, but, you need to believe just because I'm Somalian that I guess I'm too stupid. I'm too low IQ to do my accounting correctly. That's why my net worth goes from $30 million to $95,000. Oh my gosh. But nonetheless, today she was actually confronted on this by a Lindell TV reporter, and well, take a look.
Omar, the last time I spoke to you, you said that I was stupid for asking you about your financial disclosure, but there's some discrepancies on there. Would you like to explain that? How did you make such a big mistake on this?
Absolutely, you're stupid for asking me anything.
I am?
Yes.
Well, what about the American people who are wondering how you made such a big
I have
mistake?
explained to the American people.
What's the explanation?
I have given them the explanation.
Do you want to tell our viewers? Because
I don't want to tell you jack. How about that?
Okay.
Okay. Have a good day.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Well, I don't know why she's so aggressive, but frankly, it greatly reminded me of the response that Nick Shirley got in Minnesota. Do you notice how it's the exact same? I don't know what this is. Whenever you go to a Minnesota Somali with financial documents of what they did, they suddenly get super aggressive and they're getting angry, flipping you off, threatening you. What's up with this here, right? It's like, what's going on, guys? Can we get an answer? And she has the nerve to say, I explained to the American people. Yeah, American people, we have a detailed explanation. It was a mere accounting error that made us go from $30 million to $95,000. What do you have, the accountant from Rocky 5 or something? What are we doing here? Again, did the cat walk on the keyboard? You hired some accountant in Somalia, the Captain Phillips guy. You never saw a computer before. What are we doing? He doesn't know how to count? 6 million to, okay. Whatever. What else do we need to say at this point? It's very obvious that something is being covered up here. The accountant came from the Quality Leering Center. What else can we expect? And just 9 days after, folks, she has updated her financial disclosure. Notably, she is shutting down and closing the winery business. Now, let's remind ourselves, again, this is literally the behavior of the Quality Leering Center. You may remember initially when it came under fire, they fixed the sign. They tried to, make the presentation good, and then they did this whole press conference saying, we are legitimate business. Oh, stop being racist, which is the same thing Ilhan Omar did, right? I have legitimate financial filings. Stop being racist. And then later on, just within the span of a couple weeks after realizing, I might really get investigated for this, you dissolve the business, which the Quality Leering Center did. And then, you just claim it was an accounting error or something like that. Yeah. I don't know why this behavior just repeats itself every single time, but, why should it be surprising? The person who's saying Somali fraud is a myth from Congress is literally the original Somali fraudster. There's like a pattern of this. And it's not that the politicians are isolated from it. The behavior runs deepest within the politicians. What should we expect? As I've been saying for many months now, the Democrat Party, when you really break it down, is barely a political institution. It is a mass money laundering criminal organization using liberal politics as a cover story, right? It's very easy to use woke politics to justify money laundering when you think about that for a second, because you can say, oh, we're the Democrats. We believe in higher taxes because we want to fund more public works. Oh, what's a very easy place to start money laundering? Government contracts? Oh, we can just do that type of stuff, right? And of course, right, if you question it because they put so many POCs, as they call them, in power, you're a racist. If you don't understand why math works differently in Somalia, then, you just go F yourself. Ilhan Omar doesn't owe you jack blank, according to her. But anyways, on the topic, ladies and gentlemen, of left-wing money laundering, fraud, and corruption, we now have to bring you perhaps partially the reason why maybe Ilhan Omar could be freaking out. Nonetheless, let's even assume it's an isolated story. One of the biggest political stories of this year, and that is that, as you can see, the DOJ is now bringing charges against the Southern Poverty Law Center, aka the SPLC. Now, if you're remotely familiar with politics, but especially the mass cancellations of conservatives that occurred over the past several years, especially during the first Trump administration, you would know SPLC is very powerful. They're the top quote-unquote anti-hate group in America, and they were thriving for a long time, getting conservatives debanked, canceled from social media, deplatformed, etc., by labeling them hateful people and all of this stuff. So keep in mind, they used to at least have incredible power. Arguably the top left-wing NGO that there is. Now, what did we say following the Charlie Kirk assassination? This organized network of fraud, crime, and terrorism and violence needs to be dismantled, the NGO network, right? Well, now the biggest left-wing NGO in the country has been charged, ladies and gentlemen, with wire fraud, false statements, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Oh, wait. Didn't Vince Dow say the Democrat Party is a revolving door criminal money laundering organization? That's very interesting. It's not just Somalians and Minnesotans, right? They're one piece of the puzzle. Why is there so much money laundering going on within left-wing NGOs and causes? Well, it doesn't stop there, though, because I want you to take a listen to what they were actually up to. All right? It doesn't just stop at, they were up to financial fraud, they were no good. Yeah, we understand that, okay, BLM stole the money, SPLC steals the money, Ilhan Omar steals your money. But what were they giving the money to specifically? This is where it gets crazy. Take a listen to these details.
The Southern Poverty Law Center, in a massive, sweeping indictment, has been charged with allegations of fraud and using the banking system to perpetrate that fraud. I just want to talk about a couple of brief things here. The Southern Poverty Law Center themselves advertise to raise money to dismantle violent extremist groups for a period of at least a decade. They use their donor network to raise money to purportedly dismantle violent extremist groups. However, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, used the money they raised from their donor network to actually pay the leadership of these very groups. I just want to say that again. They used the fraudulently raised money by lying to their donor network, thousands of Americans, to go ahead and actually pay the leadership of these supposed violent extremist groups. The groups, as the general laid out, include the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America, Unite to Right, National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, the Aryan Nation Motorcycle Club, and the National Socialist Party of America, and also the American Front. In at least one of these matters, our investigation revealed that funds were used to facilitate the commission of further state and federal offenses, totaling over $3 million. Furthermore, our investigation revealed that the Southern Poverty Law Center, on top of perpetuating this widespread, decade-long, multi-million-dollar fraud, conducted more criminal activity. They attempted to hide their criminal activity from our financial banking network. They set up shell companies and entities around America so that the financial institutions that we rely on as everyday Americans were deceived in believing that money was not coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yeah, so if you heard those details correctly, I hope you understand why this is arguably one of the biggest stories of the entire decade. I know it won't be covered as such, it will likely be forgotten about very soon, but we shouldn't, okay? We need to comprehend how big this is. Because the SPLC, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, is the biggest supposed quote-unquote anti-hate group in the United States. It is the archetype, it is kind of the spearhead, the physical embodiment of the left-wing NGO and dark money network that we talk about so much. Like, this is the ambassador, this is what it is, this is the SPLC, right? And it turns out that the largest supposed anti-hate group in America, who purports to be fighting the quote-unquote far right, the KKK, the neo-Nazis, by the way, has used this very platform and authority to cancel various different conservatives, Charlie Kirk and Turning Point included, by the way, putting them on the KKK Nazi list, getting them debanked, creating all these legal troubles, etc., etc. Charlie talked a lot about this organization.
Understand that they're literally putting high school chapters of ours on a hate group next to the KKK. And next to neo-Nazi groups. And I mean, we can laugh this off. There's an element to this. Remember that there was a shooter that went to the Family Research Council years ago, inspired by the SPLC list. This is them trying to make us basically surrender at Turning Point USA. We're going to do the opposite, and our students are only going to lean in even more. But they can't debate us on our ideas. They cannot have dialogue. They cannot actually go onto the merits of why they are right or why we might be wrong. Instead, they must smear us with the age-old one-liner that you are a racist or that you are a hater, and they're finally realizing the power of Turning Point USA, which is why they put us on this list.
Well, when you're effective, you're a threat.
After Charlie Kirk was put on their watch list, he got shot. Well, they'll say things like, oh, Trump's targeting us. No. You know who cracked the case? The banks.
It turns out was actually money laundering to groups like the KKK, the American Nazi Party, Unite the Right, which, by the way, is the organization that put together the Charlottesville rally. And so you might ask why that is. I think the reason is actually incredibly obvious. Because all that you heard in the late 2010s, starting at the tail end of the Obama administration, about the rise of the far right in America, white supremacy, neo-Nazis, needless to say, as you could probably ascertain, none of this stuff was actually real. You think back to 2015 even, how much they tried to accost that type of stuff with MAGA. Oh, Trump is a Klansman, Trump represents the KKK. I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that all the MAGA voters watching this video, you very likely don't even know anyone who is in the KKK, has ever been in the KKK, but especially nowadays, right? That organization doesn't exist. And to the extent to which it is, it's long been assumed by conservatives, oh, that's a FBI honeypot, right? There's no way anyone's actually still part of the KKK, but look, the BBC or whatever fake organization, let's say hypothetically, did some documentary on this far-right group, and, you know, they say, oh, look, this is MAGA, this is the right wing, and we sit there and say, no, it's not. We don't even know these people. No one around us even is what is this, right? Same thing goes for the supposed neo-Nazis, right? Anyone ever met an actual neo-Nazi? I don't know. But they seem to suggest they're running around everywhere. You know, same thing even I'd argue with Unite the Right. You know, it's worth noting that whole Charlottesville situation to this day is incredibly shady. You look at Richard Spencer, the actual guy who organized that, right? The avowed white nationalist or whatever. He was setting up that whole movement. Okay, years later, it's believed, it's alleged he took a deal with the federal government. He endorses Biden in 2020. It's the most obvious alleged asset behavior, we'll say, that you would ever see in your life, right? A lot of this stuff is very strange. But you put it all together and begin to realize, yeah, so it makes perfect sense. The left wing astroturf this fake concept of the quote-unquote far right that doesn't exist, right? It's literally a left-wing op. It is a psyop, right? You want to talk about psyop? I know that word's been popularized a lot in recent years, okay? Psychological operations. This is it right here. Like the far right, quote-unquote, is a leftist psyop. It is a means to do what, by the way? To discredit people like Charlie Kirk, people like you and I, right? The normal, everyday MAGA conservatives who are actually being effective within the political system. We don't even have to clarify or explain. We're nothing like the freaking KKK, okay? KKK probably doesn't even support Trump if we're being completely honest. But by creating this fake boogeyman, literally astroturfing it from the ground, right? It didn't even exist. They paid for it to exist. They can use that, of course, to do things like cancel us, deplatform us, debank us, censor our speech. And by the way, I hope people remember, although it might be relatively tame in recent years because of Trump winning the election and Elon buying Twitter, I want everyone to remember just how bad this cancel culture stuff used to be, right? It wasn't just a matter of people would come out and get mad at you, although that happened. This was an issue of you'd be taken off of social media. You'd be fired from your job. You'd be cut off from banking and financial institutions and Uber and Airbnb. Like your life would be cut off, right? This was a thing that happened. And it was all happening under completely false, made up BS pretenses. That is a huge story, and that is something we have to keep hammering home and talking about. This whole racist, white supremacist, KKK talking point that the left has ran with for the past 10 years is fake. It is a psyop that they themselves created. And by the way, we can now officially say that even applies to Charlottesville, right? The very group that organized Charlottesville and this whole thing, oh, the white supremacists, this represents the MAGA movement. And think back to that time. We don't know anyone who was at Charlottesville. That had nothing to do with us, right? But we got associated with it, right? We got blamed for that. When all along, what was happening? Unite the Right was apparently taking money from the left to go and perpetuate their so-called quote-unquote white supremacy. All the crap we went through, being associated with these people, constantly having to condemn these people, and the left wouldn't believe us, they'd call us Nazis anyway. And all along, these people weren't real. They were fake left-wing creations. That is insane. But, to be honest, that doesn't really surprise me, right? We shouldn't forget. PSYOPs, they still do exist, okay? The things that, we might claim to be, the conspiracy theorists are proven correct, they do exist. That stuff is absolutely real. I would just argue in recent months, the right wing has lost a lot of focus in terms of, what we used to consider to be those conspiracy theories. Let me just put it that way. But these are the conspiracy theories that really matter and get proven correct, right? That's, for example, the quote-unquote far right that you keep trying to associate with the sincere conservatives who are actually making change in this country and actually delivering the most effective right-wing political administration in the past century or so. Yeah, the effort to take them down is a left-wing op in itself. Now, that said, this actually has a very important application to the modern right wing, if you know where I'm going with this, because although I don't know who the SPLC in, let's say, modern quote-unquote right-wing media is laundering money to or not, let me just say generally and broadly that if I were the left, and, I have a long history of running PSYOPs. Again, those things have not magically vanished because Trump won the election, right? The dark, powerful people who know how to do things and they can influence brains and stuff, right? That stuff is all real, okay? And I understood that, for example, maybe post-2024, the compass of the culture has shifted a little bit more to the right, to where this very strategy of, say, calling everyone white supremacists, the KKK, trying to scare them away from the right wing, doesn't really work because, let's be honest, to a large extent, cancel culture, as you may call it, is to an extent largely dead, right? Woke is dead, etc., etc. However, right, if I were the left wing, and we now have proven that the left wing has a long history in infiltrating or even astroturfing their own version of the so-called quote-unquote right, let's think about this, guys. What would we do today? Just answer me that question, right? What would we do today? Let's say if a violent leftist shot Charlie Kirk, one of the SPLC's top enemies, one of the people out there who the left understood was a severe threat because he was so effective at what he did. Well, I don't think it would exactly win over the hearts and minds of conservatives or most right-leaning Americans to say, oh, he deserved to die, right? But if we were, someone like, say, the SPLC or any of these just organized leftists, what would be the best thing for us? What would be the best thing for Antifa? I said this at the time in response to a certain you-know-who in right-wing media, that the most effective strategy would be take the attention off of the left by, using the right wing's natural love for conspiracy theories or asking questions or something like that to say, wait a minute, guys. The left wing didn't kill him. The left wing's not your enemy. It was actually Israel. It was Egyptians. It was the Turning Point Board. I don't know what it was. It was the schizophrenic conspiracy theory that 7 months later I still can't really define, but just trust me, right? It wasn't the leftists. We're here to all defend the leftists. Oh, let's go coincidentally get praised by leftists in mainstream media. That's what I would do, right? Just something to think. I'm not saying it has anything to do with SPLC, but just something to consider. And then it's, you think for a moment, okay, these social media platforms, up until very recently, had massive censorship. Now it feels like these people aren't getting censored. Why? What could be the reason for that, right? Likewise, if I were trying to say, stop and hinder, what is in the second Trump administration? Let's not lose sight of where we are or how things historically are, right? Overall, this is the most successful right-wing administration of all of our lifetimes. It's been the most aggressive on policy. We're getting things done via even executive order that 10 years ago we would have never dreamed imaginable, even in the first Trump administration, right? Momentum is building. This is the moment where we all want to keep moving forward. It's, I would say, honestly, an A to an A+ of a presidency thus far, all things considered. But, if I wanted to break apart what historically is a very loyal voting base, let's go there, right? What would we do? Well, it'd be very hard to go to a historic MAGA card-carrying conservative and say that, oh, well, maybe you should become a libtard. Maybe you should go vote for Democrats and no kings. What, however, would be very effective would be to start this idiocy, whatever you want to call it, of Trump has betrayed you. It would be very it'd be very effective, right, to start these lies, by the way, that Trump isn't deporting anyone, he's not building the wall, he's betraying you, he's totally dropped the ball, oh, let's totally try to undermine his administration with the Epstein stuff, using it completely in bad faith, right? All of that type of stuff. Oh, he's bought out by Israel or whatever. And then the conclusion of that is what? What are so many of these characters in right-wing media, and you can ascertain who I'm talking about right now, what do they then try to present the conclusion of? What are they all virtually universally saying right now? Don't vote in the midterms. Some are even going so far as to say vote for Democrats out of protest. Some are saying don't vote in 2028 or whatever, et cetera, right? So notice how, if I were the left, that famous speech, if I were the devil, if I were the left and I wanted to break apart the right wing today, right? Knowing that maybe this past strategy of the SPLC doesn't work, but I have a playbook. I have a model there of how to infiltrate the conservative movement in the right wing, try to hijack it from within. What would be my most effective strategy? Who would I platform, right? The new quote-unquote far right. What would I try to do with that? Well, understanding that, again, cancel culture is not really a thing anymore. I can't just say racist or whatever. I would just generally try to steer them away from normal politics to a conclusion of where, oh, we should be defeatist. We should stand down. We shouldn't get involved in politics. We shouldn't vote. We should effectively surrender political control to the left. But trust me, we're not doing it because we're woke liberals. No, we're actually like the real right-wing people. We're the noticers. We're the ones who, really know what's going on. We're the true conspiracy theorists or something like that. You guys, you Israel slaves, you Zionists, you just don't know what's going on. Yeah, by handing the violent terrorist Democrats, by handing the SPLC, the open borders crazy left who wants to abolish Christianity and cut off your kids blank, right? By doing all of that stuff, we're really actually the true far right radicals. We're the cool ones. They'd make it trendy too, right? We're the trendy ones. Those normal Republicans, they're just a bunch of boomers. They don't know what they're doing. The real strategy to be heckin' cool and, rescue America or something is to not vote, to not be involved in politics, to watch conspiracy theory podcasts all day long and not actually talk about issues that are really affecting the country, right? I'm just saying. Just some thoughts I would have on that. So let me just say, as it pertains to this SPLC thing, my grand theory, although I don't know if it's much of a theory, but wild guess. Okay, I'm going to take a wild guess here. The left wing is not stopping with this. This is not the only time the left wing has done this. And just keep that in mind, right? If the left wanted to win in this country, if they wanted political control, if they wanted Democrats to win elections, and they have a history of infiltrating the right wing, we know that for a fact now, please just ask yourself, which type of right-wingers do you think today would they try to prop up? Would they platform? Would they say are the good guys or something? Well, you don't have to really speculate, because you can just look at the right-wingers today that are beloved by many different factions of the left, and then you notice the ones that the left seems to universally resent, and there's a pretty common pattern there. I'm just going to put it that way, right? The ones who are actually effective, the ones who really are presenting a true threat to the left, those are the ones that they try to cancel, debank, assassinate, etc., etc. Meanwhile, the ones where, nowadays they're saying, oh, well, we're so happy you're not supporting Trump anymore. You may be a freaking quote unquote neo-Nazi, but we're happy you're not supporting Trump. And we're going to platform you and we're going to, react to your clips and stuff like that. And we're going to, boost you in the algorithm. Notice how that stuff is happening. Just going to put that out there. Anyways, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace. Actually, wait, let me say one more thing, okay? Here on this channel, and many, I'm not claiming to be the only one, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, we were the ones saying the left did this, the left, in a peaceful and legal sense, but we have to be honest, the left is the enemy. The power of government, right? The FBI, the DOJ need to be used against the organized left, against NGOs, against literally institutions like the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Soros Network, etc., because yes, they are stoking the flames of domestic terrorism and violence and organized communism in this country. Notice the right-wingers who either advocated against that following Charlie Kirk's assassination or tried to steer their audience in a different direction. I'm not saying there's an association there, but if there were to be an association, it would make perfect logical sense. Let me just put it that way, okay? Just something to keep in mind. Anyways, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.